Thursday. Get
I'm sick of
Brexit
this.
done.
What?
All they're arguing, they just need to get it done.
Stop the chaos.
I'll get it. Oh, hi.
Who is it?
It's carol singers.
Give him a quid and tell him to bugger off.
It's perhaps important to note that by the 18th of December 2020, there had been 86,886 COVID-related deaths that year. This, I'm going to suggest, is not a matter of hindsight. It was plain that the country and that those who were bereaved were in extreme pain and distress. Could you have done more to stop it?
To stop the pandemic.
The gatherings, the Partygate, the wine and cheese parties, the Secret Santas, the pub quizzes or the Zoom quizzes.
I had no knowledge of the event on the 18th at the time.
That was not my question.
At the time that it took place.
Could you have done more to stop it?
I think that the trouble was, as I've said, that people were working extremely hard in
Mr. Johnson, I'm going to. We've heard that.
If I'd had
my question
if I'd
is,
had my, sorry, please go ahead.
And this may be one where a yes or no answer would suffice. Could you have done more to stop it?
I think the answer to that is that, given what I knew at the time about what was going on, the answer to that is no. But what I possibly should have done is issued a general instruction to everybody to be mindful of the rules and how things would appear. And as I say, I think in one of the WhatsApps that was earlier quoted by the counsel to the inquiry, that's my view.
That WhatsApp was dated almost exactly 1 year later on the 17th of December 2021.
Do you accept the evidence from Helen McNamara, about which you will be aware, and also from former Cabinet Secretaries, that Mr. Cummings himself contributed to such a toxic atmosphere that civil servants simply didn't want to work in the heart of government? You were told directly by Simon Case on the 2nd of July, lots of top-drawer people had refused to come to work because of the toxic reputation of your, I emphasise, your operation.
I didn't see any sign of that.
Simon Case, who was then the Permanent Secretary in Number 10, WhatsApped you yourself on the 2nd of July to say that lots of people, lots of top-drawer people had refused to come because of the toxic reputation of your operation.
Well, I don't remember that.
What did you do?
I don't remember that. And my impression was that the we had no difficulty recruiting the best possible people.
Hancock is unfit for this job. The incompetence, the constant lies, the obsession with media bullshit. Reference to testing, you must ask him where we'll get 500,000 per day and where's your plan for testing? And if you can scroll back out. Just pause a second, Mr. Johnson. You cannot suggest that you are unaware of the opinion taken by your chief advisor over your Secretary of State for Health. You cannot suggest you are unaware of the concerns expressed by your Cabinet Secretary about the toxic reputation of your operation, because he WhatsApped you directly. You cannot suggest that there weren't grave concerns being expressed in Downing Street, that there were people who simply would not come and work for you because of the atmosphere you allowed to develop.
So, first of all, in politics, there's never a time when you're not, if you're Prime Minister, you are constantly being lobbied by somebody to sack somebody else.
Could we have 303-245? Your first and then your second Cabinet Secretary communicate by WhatsApp, page 9. I've never seen a bunch of people less well equipped to run a country. That's not a matter of atmospherics or lobbying or part of the general day in, day out friction within government, is it?
Yes, I think it is. And I think that WhatsApp conversation is intended to be, though clearly it isn't, ephemeral. It tends to the pejorative and the hyperbolical. And I think that the worst vice, in my view, would have been to have had an operation where everybody was so deferential and so reluctant to make waves that they never expressed their opinion, they never challenged, and they never doubted. It was much more important to have a group of people who are willing to doubt themselves and to doubt each other. And I think that was creatively useful rather than the reverse.
Some of these senior advisors didn't just lack deference, to use your word, Mr. Johnson. They doubted you, and they doubted your ability and your competence. You, whilst announcing that you would not listen to those who had said, let the virus rip, had used the words used the words yourself. You deny that. So could you please look at the diaries?
Sorry, what I'm saying is that this was a phrase in common parlance at the time, and remains so.
Sir Patrick Valence's diary is 273901, page 92.
Yes, sir.
Actually having a discussion, a meeting with the PM about, quote, letting it rip, page...
But I don't wish to be
I'm just going to put...
repetitive, but this is exactly what you'd expect me to be talking about at this stage. This is June 2020.
I'm going to show you all the ones, Mr. Johnson, out of fairness. The Prime Minister meeting begins to argue for letting it rip, saying, yes, there will be more casualties, but so be it. They've had a good innings. 439. We should let it rip a bit. 150. He's obsessed with older people accepting their fate. 230. Obsessed with the average age of death being 82, which is longer, you believe, than the average life expectancy. Get COVID, live longer, you said. We're in a really tough spot, a complete shambles. I really don't want to do another national lockdown. You are told that if you want to go down this route of letting go, you need to tell people, you need to tell them you're going to allow people to die. Was your position, Mr. Johnson, that in light of your views secretly held about people dying having reached their time anyway, that you were obliged to reject the advice of your advisors that there be a circuit breaker?
No.
That there be no national lockdown until the last possible moment?
No.
And that you would try a tier system?
No. 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 So the implication of the implication that you're trying to draw from those conversations is completely wrong.
But do you accept that there is a considerable body of material which addresses not just their private thoughts of the other individuals in government, of them personally, but relates to the performance of government, to the way in which your administration actually operated? Do you accept that as a general proposition?
I do, and I think that that was a good and a healthy thing, because we needed, given the scale of what we were facing, we needed constantly to challenge ourselves and constantly to try to do better.
Your own chief advisor, Mr. Cummings, described on the 4th of May something the government had done as being the best success of the whole criminally incompetent government performance. How could that be a good thing?
Because what he is trying to do is to not for me to explain his quotation. You can ask him yourself. But what we were generally trying to do was to make sure that we delivered the best possible service for the people of the UK who were going through an absolutely terrible, terrible time.
On the 27th of March, after Mr. Cummings had asserted that Whitehall had nearly killed huge numbers of people and cost millions of jobs, and that Mr. Hancock had failed to get on top of the testing problems, you yourself said these 3 words, totally fucking hopeless. That was a reference to the performance of an important part of government.
I'd stress the word nearly in that.
No, your response, Mr. Johnson.
And I would say that my job was not uncritically to accept that everything we were doing was good, though I as it happens, as I said to you, I do think that the country as a whole had notable achievements during the crisis.
A book is being written about the Prime Minister's time in office. Apparently it's going to be out by Christmas. Is that the release date or the title?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I have been in office for just under 2 months.
Last week, the Prime Minister ignored every question put to her. Instead, she repeatedly criticised Labour's plan for a 6-month freeze on energy bills. This week, the Chancellor made it her policy. How can she be held to account when she's not in charge? Mr. Speaker, last week the Prime Minister stood there and promised absolutely no spending reductions. They all cheered. This week, the Chancellor announced a new wave of cuts. What's the point of a Prime Minister whose promises don't even last a week? Mr. Speaker, those spending cuts are on the table for one reason and one reason only, because they crashed the economy. And working people are going to have to pay 500 quid more a month on their mortgages. And what's the Prime Minister's response? To say she's sorry. What does she think people will think and say? That's all right, I don't mind financial ruin. At least she apologised. She's asking me questions because we're a government in waiting and they're an opposition in waiting. There's no getting away from this. Millions of people are facing horrendous mortgage repayments. And she's admitted it's her fault. She shouldn't have conducted an economic experiment on the British public. But it's not just her. They put her there. They're keeping her there. Why on earth would anyone trust the Tories with the economy ever again? Mr. Speaker, the only mandate she's ever had is from members opposite. It was a mandate built on fantasy economics and it ended in disaster. The country's got nothing to show for it except the destruction of the economy and the implosion of the Tory party. I've got the list here. 45p tax cut, gone. Corporation tax cut, gone. 20p tax cut, gone. 2-year energy freeze, gone. Tax-free shopping, gone. Economic credibility, gone. And her supposed best friend, the former Chancellor, he's gone as well. They're all gone. So why is she still here?
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I am a fighter and not a quitter.
Madam Deputy Speaker, if the purpose of the Rwanda gimmick was to solve a political headache of the Tories' own making, to get people out of the country who they simply couldn't deal with, then it's been a resounding success. After all, they've managed to send 3 Home Secretaries there, an achievement for which the whole country can be grateful. So, apart from members of his own cabinet, how many people has the Prime Minister sent to Rwanda? Madam Deputy Speaker, when they first announced this gimmick, they claimed Rwanda would settle tens of thousands of people. Then their Deputy former Prime Minister quickly whittled it down to mere hundreds. Then the Court of Appeal in June made clear there's housing for just 100. The current number of people sent there remains stubbornly consistent, 0. At the same time, Madam Deputy, Article 19 of the treaty says the parties shall make arrangements for the United Kingdom to resettle a portion of Rwanda's most vulnerable refugees in the United Kingdom. So how many refugees from Rwanda will be coming here to the UK under the treaty? Migration's trebled on his watch, and all he can do is make up numbers about the Labour Party. It's really pitiful. I'm not actually sure the Prime Minister can have read this thing. Article 4 says the scheme is capped at Rwanda's capacity. That's 100. Article 5 says Rwanda can turn them away if they want. Article 19 says we actually have to take refugees from Rwanda. How much did this fantastic deal cost us?
£100. It's an incredibly comprehensive plan. So if he cares so much about it, the simple question for him is, does he support the plan?
Madam Deputy Speaker, he clearly hasn't read it. Annex A says on top of the 140 million he's already showered on Rwanda, when we send people there under this treaty, we have to pay for their accommodation and their upkeep for 5 years. And that's not all. This morning, a government minister admitted that anyone we send to Rwanda who commits a crime can be returned to us. I'm beginning to see why the Home Secretary said the Rwanda scheme is something to do with bats, I think, wasn't it? What does he first think attracted Mr. Kagame to hundreds of millions of pounds for nothing in return? Madam Deputy Speaker, I would say that this treaty's got more holes in than a Swiss cheese, but I don't want to wind up the Prime Minister by talking about a European country again. Madam Deputy Speaker, you have to give credit to the Rwandan government. They saw this Prime Minister coming a mile off. You can only imagine their delight, their sheer disbelief, when having already banked £140 million of British taxpayer money without housing a single asylum seeker, the Prime Minister appears again with another offer they can't refuse. A gimmick that will send taxpayers' money to Rwanda, refugees from Rwanda to Britain, and won't stop the boats. It was mentioned of Margaret Thatcher earlier. Madam Deputy Speaker,
there's understandable excitement about the mention of the name, but the House must listen to the Leader of the Opposition, Sir Keir Starmer.
Party go from up yours to laws to take our money, Kagame. Madam Deputy Speaker, forget the private jet. He's obviously on a private planet of his own. But as Daily Mail readers learnt this week that the Prime Minister has begun to feel sorry for himself. He's even been heard comparing his plight to his beloved Southampton Football Club. I do think that's a bit harsh, because Saints have been on an 11-game unbeaten run, while, as the song has it, the Prime Minister gets battered everywhere he goes. But if you want the perfect example of how badly the Tories have broken the asylum system, last week the Home Office admitted that 17,000 people in the asylum system.
Order! Order, come on. Sir Keir Starmer.
Thank you. If you want the perfect example of how badly they've broken the asylum system, Madam Deputy Speaker, last week the Home Office admitted that 17,000 people in the asylum system have disappeared. Their exact words, it's hard to believe this, we don't think we know where all these people are. Now, you might lose your car keys, you might lose your headphones, you might lose your marbles. How do you lose 17,000 people?
Thank you, Prime Minister. Chris Mason, BBC News. Are you saying to your MPs bluntly on all of this, back me or sack me?
What I'm saying, not just to my MPs, but to the entire country, is that I share their frustration. But that's what we're about. We're about getting stuff done on the things that matter. This matters, and we're going to make sure that we deliver. Next, can I turn to ITV?
Prime Minister, you've made clear that stopping the boats is one of your biggest promises to voters, and you're also telling us this legislation is the way to do it. So can I ask you, will next week's vote be treated as a vote of confidence in your government, and will you throw Conservative MPs out of the party if they defy you?
You don't know, but what this vote is about confidence in Parliament. Next, can we go to Sky?
Thank you. Prime Minister, do you see the reality of what is happening here? You've lost control of your party, and this has become a confidence issue, not in Parliament, but in you. Do you accept that, and will you call an election if you lose these votes?
What's happening here is we're delivering on what I said, and I'm going to see this thing through.
If you can't, is it election time?
I said I'm confident I can get this thing done, right? And that's the same question as I said to Anushka and ITV. The question is for the Labour Party. Right? We're going to get this thing into Parliament. We've introduced it in record time. I want to get it on the statute books in record time. So the question is, not for me, I've got a plan. It's very clear what we're about and what we're trying to do, and we're confident it's going to work. And my track record tells you that I can get things done. The question's for everyone else. And crucially, the Labour Party, what's their plan? Are they going to vote for this legislation? Because if they really want to stop the boats, if they really get the values of the British people, then they should be fully backing this plan, and they haven't done that yet. Next, can we go to Daily Mail?
Thanks, PM. Your Immigration Minister resigned last night, calling this legislation a triumph of hope over experience. I mean, he's right, isn't he? And he says you're going to end up being yet another politician who makes promises on immigration that you can't keep. I mean, he's right. This isn't going to work, is it?
No, he's simply not right, actually. And next, The Sun.
Prime Minister, if you don't get a flight to Rwanda off the ground by the time you call the next election, are the voters entitled to lose trust in you and put their faith elsewhere?
You know, I think this is a Conservative government that is absolutely getting things done, doing what we say we are going to do. We've stabilised the economy and we've cut taxes for people. Yes.
Chris Hope, GB News. GB News has been in Calais, Prime Minister, where migrants have told us that they are laughing at the UK and its Rwandan policy. Are they right to laugh? Is your policy a joke and your government a laughingstock on this matter? And can I quickly ask a second one? There's reports today in the House of Commons that UK politicians were hacked by Russia, FSB. Were you hacked by the FSB?
No, look, so on the second one, there are a range of protections that both parliamentarians and ministers have and advice that they follow, and they get support from the National Cyber Centre and all those things, and I'm pretty confident in the protections that I have. On your first question, look at the results. So you've been over in Calais, you've been over in France, because we want to get it up and running as quickly as possible so we can finish the job, have a deterrent and stop the boats. That's what I'm committed to doing, that's what the team is committed to doing, and we're going to make sure that we see it through. Thank you very much.
This has been a 2023 Wolfie Terry Loves Peanut Butter production.